Okay, so we're up to rule number 7. Hope you're having fun in this course learning about listening. A lot of great information. This information, literally, I have charged people up to $15,000 to attend a weekend course to learn this material. I am giving you my best stuff after 20 years of training, studying some of the best people, and testing a lot of this stuff out in the field. Salespeople are always out in the field. I always picture us in very tall grass. So if you're out in the field, that's awesome. So rule number 7 is you must deal with all icebergs in your sales interaction. In your sales call, you want to deal with what I call an iceberg. Now, the reason that I call this an iceberg is let's look at what an iceberg is like, okay? If we have an iceberg, let's imagine that this is the water, okay? And if you look in the Antarctic Sea, you have icebergs. Now the iceberg looks like this. There's the tip of the iceberg, and you can perhaps you can see some of the iceberg, but the larger part of the iceberg, like the one that sunk the Titanic, is mostly under the surface. Now, that's why I call this an iceberg, that you must deal with all icebergs in your sales call. Many times what happens to us in a sales call, and by the way, if you are tracking along, if your antenna is up, if you're watching their eye movements, if you're watching their body language, if you're watching that ridge across the top of their head, and the top of their head above their eyes, and you're looking to see what things are landing, which things aren't, you'll also see, and you'll also, really finding icebergs is like you get a feeling. You get a feeling sometimes based on what you see, sometimes based on what you hear, sometimes based on body language. Finding icebergs in a sales call is a very, how can we say it? It's a very intuitive thing. You have to use your intuition a little bit. Now, most of the time I would tell you that your feelings won't help you in sales. Obi-Wan Kenobi told Luke Skywalker, Luke, search your feelings. I think it's good advice, but not in a sales call. Your feelings will screw you. Your feelings will totally screw you up. However, one of the things that you do want to be intuitive about, and I think that as a network marketer in a sales call, or as a salesperson in a sales call, you want to understand that you do need to think about your intuition. You do need to tap into it, because you will be able to feel. You'll literally be able to feel when something is right and when something's not right. And so what this means is, by dealing with the iceberg, icebergs are things that are underneath the surface that are not necessarily being said, but you feel them. For example, we used before an example of the idea of a prospect tapping their pen, sitting there as you're talking, and they're tapping on their desk, or their foot is tapping, or they keep looking over you. The iceberg there, what's underneath the surface, is you get the feeling that they're not present. You get the feeling that they're not listening. Now, you can continue to go on in your presentation. You can continue asking questions. You can continue showing them your video, your brochure, giving them a sample, having them drink it, taste it, whatever your upline or your sales manager suggests that you do, that's fine. But here's the problem. The problem is when you feel it, it usually is there. It's usually happening. For example, have you ever been presenting to a prospect and you do get that blank face? They don't nod or track along with you. They don't use any caveman talk, cave person talk in responding to what you're saying, and you're seeing that you're going nowhere, or that they're not interested, or there was some version of them saying, I'm not interested. So in the 70s, the training said that you should try to find the hot button, and we were always taught, not that I was trained in the 70s, but we were taught that we should give our presentation from beginning to end, whether the prospect was interested or not, because you never knew whether it was going to be the beginning, the middle, or the end that was going to hit their hot button. Well, that's just not really, it's not effective in today's selling world. If time management is very important in selling. And if you're, for example, if you're in someone's home and you're giving a presentation, you certainly do not want to do an hour presentation with someone who in the first 5 minutes indicates to you that they have no interest in your product or service and they're completely closed off and you can't get any rapport going with them. I wouldn't suggest doing a 2-hour or 3-hour presentation for that person. I think you should cut bait and you should move on, go do some prospecting, go meet with some people that are really interested in your product or service. Now, that being said, if you are feeling something, if you're feeling that something is wrong, you want to bring it up and you want to ask the prospect about it. Let me give you an example. And sometimes it's not just a feeling, it can even be something that a prospect would say. I remember years ago going to do some sales training at a radio station, and I wasn't doing the training. I was there on a sales appointment, and I met with the sales manager. And one of the questions that I like to ask is, what have you done in the past to take care of your sales issues? You'll hear this from me in MJ's 5 essential selling questions. Well, what do you want? Well, we want more sales. Excellent. What have you done in the past to get more sales? And the manager made a big deal, and she said to me, oh, last year we went to this fantastic training. Last year we took our entire sales force to this training that was in Hartford. It was at the Hartford Civic Center, and they had all these great speakers that came, and it was a full day of training, and I think we paid I think we bought like 10 tickets for $99 a piece, and we had we invested like over $1,200 in the training. And so I had to keep a straight face, and I was like, that's good. And I said, and what else did you do for training last year? And she said, oh, well, that was it. That was our big training for the year. So what happened to me as a salesperson is I started to determine that what I started to see was what I call smelling money. And I wasn't smelling that much money for someone who spends $1,200 for a year of training for 10 people, and they think that's a lot, and I said to her, was that a lot of money? She said, oh yeah, to get the station to pay for that was a big deal. So here's the iceberg that I saw there. Underneath the surface, I know my training sessions cost a lot of money for me to come in and do training. I'm starting to get the feeling that this is not a good prospect for me. I'm starting to get the feeling that we're not going to be able to do business together, especially if she thinks $1,200 is a lot for training. It's not for me. I can get up to $10,000 to $15,000 for a day of training. So you see, the iceberg now came into play because of something that she said to me. So here's what I mean when I say you must deal with all icebergs in your situation. Here's what I mean when I say that you must deal with the things that you feel, the things that are underneath the surface. I felt this was going to be a problem, and now I could have continued to stay there and present and go on, talk about my syllabus, talk about my great credentials, give my referrals. I could have even gone home and done a huge proposal to come back to this person, but I immediately smelled that there was not money here, that they did not fit the profile. Now, this isn't a course on how to qualify people, but you do need to understand that you have to deal with these things that are under the surface. So what I said to her, using my best wounded child voice, I said, Kathy, I said, I'm happy that you told me about the going to that training, and it sounds like it was a really good training. She said, yes. I said, listen, it's a little awkward for me to bring this up, but if you invested $1,200 and you thought that that was a lot of money for training, which you did, right? And she said, oh yeah, we did. My training sometimes can cost as much as $5,000 to $6,000 a day. Is that going to be an issue for you? Is that going to be a problem for you? I'm getting the feeling that maybe it would be. Well, in that example, I totally blew her out of the water. Her eyes went like this. $6,000. MJ, we could barely get $1,000 from the station to send all 12 people to this training. And she allowed me to, and by confirming what I believe. Now, by the way, maybe she didn't confirm. Maybe she said, oh yeah, that was last year, but this year we have $30,000 for training. That's why I invited you in. So my purpose in teaching you that if you feel something, if you feel it, you must bring it up. You must talk about it. If you hear something that triggers something for you, you must bring it up. If you feel that things aren't landing well, you can say things like, I'm getting the feeling. I'm getting the feeling that. So a lot of times you need the words to bring up the iceberg and get it to the surface. I'm getting the feeling is a good one. This is awkward for me. This is kind of what I said to Kathy. This is awkward for me, but I need to bring this up, Kathy. If you think that $1,200 is a lot, it's not a lot. We need to discuss that. Okay? I'm getting the feeling. Here's another way that you can say it. I don't know how to say this to you. I don't know how to say this to you. Or, I don't know how to say this to you, or I don't know how to bring this up to you, but there's something that we need to talk about. And then what you do is you launch into discussing whatever the feeling that you're having is the thing that's underneath the sales call. It is the iceberg that may prevent you from either making the sale, or also a lot of times if you do make the sale, you'll leave, you'll think the sale is made, perhaps you'll even have a signed contract, and when you get back to your office or back to your home, you'll find that the deal has been killed, it's been canceled. For some reason, they canceled the deal or stopped payment on a check or on a credit card. That's because if you felt that it wasn't going to go through, it probably wouldn't go through, and that's why you should bring it up in the sales call and deal with those things as they come on. By the way, you have to be very calm and very cool. You have to, when you're going to bring something up, an iceberg in a sales call, you need to be able to use a good, nurturing, wounded child voice. You do not want to attack anybody. You know, it would have done me no good to have said to Kathy, hey Kathy, if you guys can't spend $1,200, you're certainly not going to give me $10,000. Isn't that true? I said it very gently. I said, hey, I'm a little awkward bringing this up, but you know, you invested. I really appreciate you telling me that you invested $1,200. My prices typically are a lot more than that, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $10,000 per day. Is that going to be a problem or an issue? It was, and it was great that I brought it up. It saved me a lot of time. I never did do business with that radio station, and I was okay with that because they just didn't fit the profile of someone that I could really work with. So you want to always deal with anything that's under the surface. Bring it up by saying, I'm getting the feeling. This is a little awkward for me. I don't know how to say this to you. You might even say something like, you know, it's obvious that whatever I'm saying is not landing. There's something going on that's not catching for you. It's not fitting for you. And let me just stop my presentation right now and tell me where I'm going wrong. Because obviously I'm seeing you frowning. You're not responding to me. There's something about this that isn't working for you. Would you mind sharing it with me? And it'll help you in your selling. It'll cut your selling time shorter. If you do have a prospect that is not a good prospect for you and is not interested, and it'll help you go to the bank more often.